was a busy summer in the Russian capital. Moscow saw protests just about every weekend since July. Much of them were about the City Duma elections. But there's a bigger issue at stake here: Russia's political system, which is pretty much stage managed by the Kremlin. Confused? Thankfully, RFERL is here to help sort it out. First up, Dopuskai. This is easy. Pretty much means let them through. You see, protesters wanted liberal candidates to run for the City Duma, but officials came up with all sorts of weird obstacles to block them. What else? Pragulka. So, protesting is legal under Russian law, but you gotta have a permit. And officials come up with all sorts of pretexts not to give them. The opposition got smart. They're not calling the protests protests, they're calling them strolls, as in, let's go for a stroll in the park. Also, protesters want to march through downtown Moscow. Officials have said, no way, Jose. They've offered up Sakharov Boulevard. It's named for a famous scientist and peace activist. And though it's in central Moscow, the avenue is basically Nowheresville. In fact, it's so far out of the way that few people ever pass it. Protesters would only be protesting in front of themselves. The opposition, meanwhile, they're a mix of personalities. Alexei Navalny is the best known. But they're not the official opposition. That would be the parties in parliament who aren't the ruling party, but vote the Kremlin line anyway. They're the systemic opposition. Navalny and the other liberal groups, they're known as the non-systemic opposition. Confused yet? Moving on. Riot Police. They've been pretty brutal in their crackdown on demonstrators, though, to be fair, not at every one. Still, that crackdown has outraged people, and it's inspired all sorts of memes and funny terms. Cosmonauts, that's one of the more amusing terms. Take a look at the uniforms. Pretty easy to see where that comes from. Oh, and this is a good one. Ventilova comes from the word to screw, like with a screwdriver. The riot cop grabs your arm, twists behind your back, and frog marches you to the paddy wagon. There's another way Russians have tried to get around these prohibitions. That would be the single-person picket. You don't need a permit to hold a protest just by yourself. Stand with a sign someplace prominent, and voila! It's not totally foolproof, of course. Russians have also been having fun with images of riot police showing up in famous paintings. Maybe where Russian protesting is concerned, wit is mightier than the sword.